Hi, welcome to X-Bag. I know I've been away for a little while, but I'm glad to be back. Today we're going to sort of deviate from our regular format of discussing books and authors. Although my guest is an author, we will be looking at an issue rather than a book. Mr. Williams has been a frequent visitor to X-Bag, and I find him to be an extraordinary individual. And again, I want to welcome you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Mr. Williams, we'll get right to business since we have a lot to cover. Is it your basic contention that blacks in America are not citizens?
That's true. That's my contention. Contention is what I've been saying all along.
And why do you feel this way?
Well, you see, the United States Constitution that was drawn up in 1787 makes us non-citizens of this United States of America. And that is the main reason why I'm saying that we, living in America, under the United States Constitution that was drawn up in 1787, are not citizens of the United States of America due to the provision that was brought forth and put into the Constitution.
Can you elaborate on those provisions for me?
Well, you got to go back when the Constitution was drawn up in 1787, okay? During that time and before, you got to go back to the time of the condition that we were living under at that time. At that time, we were considered slaves.
All right.
And during the convention of 1787 that brought forth the Constitution, we were not even thought of as citizens or even thought of as human beings. So therefore, we were not even made part of that document because we were chattel property. So a human being or a race of people who are in chattel servitude can't be considered even as human beings. So this is the outlook of the Founding Fathers on us as people during that time.
Well, if your assessment is correct, nothing has changed other than the time. We are still in that same mode of being not human as far as I look at it through your eyes. I'm saying we have the Bill of Rights, we have the amendments. You feel that these are not applicable to us?
No, you see, we are under the impression living in this country that the 14th Amendment, which states that a person born in this country or either naturalized in this country is a citizen of the United States of America, which that sounds good. Then the 5th article of that same 14th Amendment says that the first article cannot be validated unless it goes through congressional legislature. Then the bottom line of the 14th Amendment, it was adopted in 1868, but never enforced. It was never signed into law, never ratified. So the 14th and 15th Amendment was, let's say, brought forth during the time of Reconstruction to try to give us citizenship, but it was never signed into law. So therefore, it's just a document that has a lot of beautiful words on it, but it has no meaning for us as a people.
Well, I would raise the two issues. Number one, when you're reciting the 14th Amendment, you're absolutely correct, except that you omitted a certain section there, which states that anyone who is under the jurisdiction thereof is, in fact, a citizen. Isn't that what the 14th Amendment states?
Well, see, that doesn't have, it wasn't signed. See, so the amendment doesn't mean anything. It's just, see, amendment simply means something that's approved. I'm sorry, it means something that's improved. Ratification means something approved. In order to have that approved, it has to be signed or ratified. Okay. You see?
Does the date of July the 9th, 1868 have any bearing, bring any significance to you?
Well, you're talking about the 14th Amendment now.
Right.
Okay. It has no significance because they didn't sign it. So it means nothing to me. as a member of the African race of people.
Well, the date that I mentioned to you is the date of ratification of the 14th Amendment.
No.
And I have copies of that document here, which states that on the 14th, the 9th of July, that Secretary of State Seward certified the amendment has become a part of the Constitution. There were some contingencies, but it was in fact ratified. So I'm saying that, you know, not to get into a debate with you about it. I'm just saying that according to the record that I have, that the 14th Amendment was in fact ratified.
Was it ratified through Congress, Senators?
Yes, there were several.
Senators?
Yes, all the states are listed here that I have, and this came from the congressional record, and it clearly states that the 14th Amendment was ratified. And as to that section that you says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which means that any person that is under the jurisdiction of the United States, and I think that we can clearly state that we are, in fact, under the jurisdiction thereof, then, you know, it sort of raises a question as to your argument, and perhaps you can expound on it a little bit further to make it more clear to our viewers.
Okay. First place you got to understand about the United States Constitution.
Okay.
It is strictly open for interpretation.
Absolutely.
The last interpreter, or the people who will interpret the United States Constitution, is the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Okay? And the Supreme Court has the last word in interpreting the Constitution. I'm saying that that 14th Amendment was adopted but never enforced. Had it been enforced, then we as the people living in the United States of America would have been citizens or considered citizens under that 14th Amendment. Now, another way you can look at it is this. If we were citizens, like you're saying, under the 14th Amendment, then why the Jim Crow laws was enforced and implied and put upon a certain race of people, meaning the African race? If you see, you don't put Jim Crow laws on citizens. You don't do that. You see, then you can go a little further and say this: if we are citizens of the United States of America, then Rosa Parks should never have been asked to give up her seat to a white man. If we are citizens of the United States of America, we go a little further still, then Martin Luther King would not have been assassinated. He would be alive today, because there would have been no need for a civil rights march. You see, if we are citizens of the United States of America, and you said that this 14th Amendment made us citizens, you said that it was ratified, and I'm saying that it was adopted, which it states in the 14th Amendment, then why in 1964, for one race of people, did the United States government sign into order a civil rights bill for one race of people? These are the questions that that go against an individual who think that the 14th Amendment made us citizens of the United States of America. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. And the reason why I disagree with it is simply because of the things I just stated.
Well, let's say that you present a convincing argument relative to the Jim Crow laws and the Voting Rights Act, but you're sort of jumping the gun. And I'm saying that I'm trying to look at the language of the 14th Amendment, since here is where we find ourselves at this point, that the 14th Amendment subjects us to citizenship. And there's no question about the language of the law, and as far as interpretation, obviously the Supreme Court is the final arbiter. But I'm saying that according to the 14th Amendment, this makes us citizens. And, you know, we have a difference of opinion here. And, you know, I have no problem with that. But I'm reading the language of the law, and I'm saying that the other issues, as far as the Black Code laws that were passed right after the Civil War, the Voting Rights Act, the Jim Crow laws. We will get into all of that, but right now we're dealing with the 14th Amendment. And relative to that amendment, also, I'm saying that if we look at our white counterparts, or other ethnic groups, they all seem to share equal rights. Wouldn't you not agree?
Well, that has nothing to do with us. We're talking about us now. We're not talking about the counterparts, such as the whites and the other people who came over here and got citizenship. We're not talking about them. We're talking about us, the African community.
Okay.
And I'm saying that the African community living in the United States of America under the name of Negro
Okay.
was excluded from citizenship via the United States Constitution. He wasn't even added. He wasn't even mentioned. He was a slave. And Roger Brooks Taney, in 1857, who was head of the Supreme Court Justice of the United States of America, said it so beautifully, you see, in the Dred Scott decision. See,
Right.
so you have all these things. If you use your analytical mind, even though this is beautiful words on paper, but in reality, the answer is no, we're not citizens of the United States of America. And it's due to the things I just brought out previous in my comments about Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Jim Crow laws that was initiated against us. And you don't take a citizen or ask a citizen to give up her seat or their seat to anybody. You see, you don't go out and tar and feather citizens and hang them from a tree. If you look at the Eyes on the Prize, during the Martin Luther King Civil Rights March, I believe it was in Montgomery, Alabama, where Bull Connor turned those water cannons on those marchers, and they bludgeoned those marchers and took them off to jail and so forth and so on. A telegram was sent to the President of the United States of America, who was John F. Kennedy, to send troops in to protect the marchers. He sent back a telegram saying, I cannot send troops in because those people have no rights for me to protect. So now all the rest of the citizens of the United States of America has rights to be protected under the United States Constitution. Then you go back to King, who was beat in Los Angeles, California.
Rodney King you're talking about.
Rodney King.
Okay.
He was beat. And the question was brought up in his trial against the white officers who beat him. They wanted to know, the courts wanted to know, was his civil rights violated?
All right.
Okay? And then you have Reginald Denny, the white truck driver who got beat by certain members of our race, but they never brought up the question of whether his civil rights was violated. See, because the Constitution automatically makes him a citizen, you see. But we, in this country, we had to be given certain civil rights acts and bills that was passed in 1964. And let me go on a little further, Mr. Rose. We're talking about the Voting Rights Act that was passed in 1965 for one race of people. Now that Voting Rights Act that was passed in 1965 has to be renewed every 20 years. There's no citizen that's living in the United States of America but us as one race living in this country has to have their voting rights to be renewed every 20 years.
All right, Len, let me just stop you right there. First, to your knowledge, to the best of your knowledge, I might add, is there any wording in the Constitution that specifically refers to any specific ethnic group?
No.
Okay.
No, it doesn't say that.
Okay.
But I'm going by the actions and the treatment and the laws that were perpetrated against us throughout the United States of America, state by state.
And these were actions taken by specific or a certain group of individuals, but it had nothing to do with the wording of the Constitution. Isn't that not correct?
But see, the Constitution, if a person who's a citizen of the United States of America, if his rights is violated, then the Constitution comes into play to protect him. See, we have no protection. When John F. Kennedy, like I mentioned to you before, was the president, when they sent a telegram asking him to send troops to protect the marches of Martin Luther King, who were being discriminated against and brutalized by Bull Connor, the telegram said that we cannot send troops because these people have no rights for us to protect.
Now, do you have any substantiating evidence, such as any documentation to present to the viewing audience that, or do you have any resources that they can go to and check out the wording of what you just got through stating about the President and the Attorney General being unable to send troops because we did not have, we as blacks did not have any civil rights? Do you have any substantiating evidence that you could offer to our viewers?
Yes.
That they could go and research?
Look at a document that is shown every February during what is called Black History Month. It's called Eyes on the Prize. In that document, you will clearly hear the situation and the wording of that situation that I just stated.
Now that is a depiction, is it not? It's a movie, isn't it?
No, it's a documentary.
It's a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as you know, there's nothing, no other evidence other than that documentary that would support your standing that the Attorney General and the President felt helpless in helping blacks during that period?
No, it's not the matter whether they felt helpless or not. It's the matter whether we had rights under the Constitution for protection. See, that's what I'm talking about. We had no rights under the Constitution. Now, if the same thing happened, if that was the Martin Luther King in 1996, and the same march went on in 1996, and the Bull Connor was alive and doing the same thing that he did during the time that he brutalized Martin Luther King, then you will have a protection, or we will have a protection under the Civil Rights law that was passed in 1964. You see, so he couldn't do that anymore. See, then he will be brought to trial for that. You see, prior to 1964, any white man can come into your home, take your child out, kill that child, do whatever he wants to do with that child, and nothing will happen to that man or that white person who did that, or anybody, because we, us, you, had no rights.
And let's say that you sort of struck a nerve there, because it is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there has never, or practically never, I should say, never been a white person who has served the supreme penalty for killing of a black person. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
So that does support your argument. However, I'm saying that, again, coming back to the Constitution, that we must be able to distinguish between what is done, what is sanctioned by state law, and what the Constitution actually states are two different things. But let's move on to the 15th Amendment.
Okay.
Why do you feel that the 15th Amendment is not relevant to blacks?
Simply because it has to be renewed every 20 years. It was, other words,
the 15th Amendment has to be renewed every 20 years?
The voting rights
Okay, go on.
bill that was passed in 1965.
Okay.
If the 15th Amendment, which state a person who's a citizen of the United States of America has the right to vote, is that correct?
Right.
You know, okay, so, but that had nothing to do with us, simply because the reason being is that in 1965, they passed a special voting rights bill for us, one race of people, living in the United States of America.
All right.
And that particular bill that was passed in 1965 for one race of people, us as a people, has to be renewed every 20 years. But no other citizen of this country, whether naturalized or born here, other than us, they don't have to go through that humiliation.
Again, you make a cogent argument.
Okay.
Because we are the only nationality that has to have a special Voting Rights Act. And if we look at some of this country's past enemies, such as the Germans and the Japanese, they have not had to have special laws enacted for them.
Correct.
And so your point is well taken on that. As far as the Jim Crow laws, how do you perceive them? I mean, are they still alive? Do you feel that they are still alive today?
Well, I put it like this. They're not supposed to be alive today. Okay? even though I hear certain things that is creeping into my ear from people from various parts of the country are telling me, like I talked to a guy yesterday, and he said that he just came back from Florida, and he said that he experienced some little things of discrimination. So I can't say that it is totally gone. I have no proof that it's totally gone, but I say it's better. It's not as harsh as it was or once was under the old Jim Crow regime.
All right, let me ask you this also, since we're dealing with the 15th Amendment. Do you also contend that the 15th Amendment was not ratified?
Of course. It wasn't ratified. Okay. That's the reason why they created a voting rights bill. See, the 15th Amendment is about the voting rights, right?
Right.
So they created a special voting rights bill for one race of people, going back to that again. So if that particular 15th Amendment, which was adopted in 1870, right, meant for us, or meant to protect us, or give us the voting rights that we are supposed to have by living in this country, which it didn't, then I will have to ask the question, then why in 1965 they passed a special voting rights bill for one race of people that has to be renewed every 20 years. So I'll keep going back to that.
And again, you make a cogent argument.
Okay.
Now, given all that you said, what do we say to young people who contemplate on entering the armed services or serving the government in some other capacity, if they would accept your theory and your premise that they are not citizens? Where does this put them, in your view?
Well, it puts them as non-citizen. I look at all people of African descent as non-citizens of this country, okay? But I can't go into the mind of each and every individual
and
African.
Know what I expect you to.
Right.
Okay.
I can't do that.
Okay.
So it's up to the individual to determine his status of his thought and his attitude and his feelings towards that question.
Well, Mr. Williams, you know, we all take up allegiance to the flag.
Mm-hmm.
We all pay taxes. We all abide by the laws of this country.
Mm-hmm.
We do everything, and when I say we, I mean we as blacks, we do everything that is called upon in the laws of the land. And it is still interesting that you find that we are still not citizens. I'm saying that we're not illegal aliens. At what point did we become outcast to the point that we were no longer considered to be citizens? Are you saying that we were never considered to be citizens?
That's what I'm saying. We were never considered to be citizens, or let me put it another way, we were never allowed to be citizens. And I'm talking about under the Constitution. See, you have a lot of people out there say, oh, I pay taxes and I live here, I was born here, I'm a citizen, I don't care what that man is saying, which is okay. Nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying, under the Constitution, we're not citizens. We were never allowed to be citizens of the United States of America in this country. Now, I want to bring forth something here, Mr. Rose, that I got out of the Webster's Dictionary, the 1957 edition. I'd like for you to read it to the viewing audience since you have your eyeglasses on.
All right.
And it's called the color line. See where I got it marked there?
Yes.
If you can read that.
The color line is defined as the barrier of social, political, and economic restrictions imposed on Negroes or other colored races. What is the significance of this?
Well, I'm showing you that you asked me, had these Jim Crow laws gone away? Right. The answer would be, I would say no. To a certain extent, yes, but to most instances, or certain instances, no. Because on jobs, as people of African origin who are working on jobs throughout America, they are experiencing corporate discrimination. They are experiencing job discrimination of all kinds, you see. So I would say no, you know. So in all walks of life, you're going to have it there. But this particular article that's in Webster's dictionary, and I want to read it over again. It says, the color line. See, this is very important, the color line. Coming out of Webster's dictionary in 1957, the barrier of social, political, and economic restrictions imposed on Negroes and other colored races. It says, draw the color line, to accept and keep the color line. Now, this is in Webster's dictionary. That's written as a situation that was imposed on Negroes living in this country. And they institutionalized that.
Well, but Mr. Williams, you cannot take that definition and apply it to the Constitution.
Well,
there's nothing in the Constitution that mentions a color line. Am I not correct?
We're not talking about that. We're coming away from the Constitution now.
No, but let's stay with the Constitution.
Okay, let's stay with the Constitution. I'm bringing that as a side issue to strengthen my argument, is that you do not take a citizen who is a citizen of a country, let's say the United States of America, you do not impose a color line on the citizens. Citizens don't have to have a color line imposed on them. Restrictions of political, economic, and social restrictions on the Negro in the United States of America, and you're going to insist that you're a citizen? You don't do citizens like that. And they specifically name the individual race that they wanted to imply and implement this color line on.
But it has no relevance to the wording of the Constitution.
It has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Okay, we're not going to argue that.
Okay.
I'm just, like I said before, I'm using that as a side issue to further strengthen my argument against we are not citizens of the United States of America due to the United States Constitution. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, now let me ask you. Mr. Williams, do you have children?
Yeah.
Boys or girls?
I have a daughter.
You have a daughter. If your daughter came to you and said, Daddy, I want to go and enlist into the armed services, would you oppose her going into the armed services?
Yes.
And why would you oppose her?
Now, this is personal now.
Okay. All right.
See, I wouldn't tell, I'm not telling the listening or the viewing audience to do this now.
Okay.
So don't have me down on record that Walter Williams said,
No.
don't do this.
No problem.
Okay, this is my own personal daughter.
Okay.
Okay. I will tell her, don't go into the armed services simply because you have nothing to fight for. You have nothing to defend. You are not a citizen of this country. When an individual take up arms for the protection of this country, he is taking up arms to protect the United States Constitution. That's what he's doing. For people living in this country to enjoy the life and the pursuit of happiness that is supposed to be enjoyed in this country as a citizen. So that's the reason why that's one of the reasons why I will tell her not to do that.
But Mr. Williams, is it not a fact that we are not prohibited from sharing in the benefits of this country?
This is okay.
We're not denied in any form or fashion. Would you not agree of pursuing whatever we want to pursue? We have freedom of choice. Are you saying that, you know, that your argument is not tenable at this stage, because on the one hand you're saying we're not citizens, but yet we are able to enjoy all the benefits of this country. We're not being suppressed by the government per se. There may be individual acts of oppression and where we are actually taken advantage of, but I'm saying that as far as the law of the land is concerned, we are in fact considered the same as anybody else.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm trying to give some credence to your argument and keeping within the scope of our topic this evening of are blacks in America constitutionally citizens?
The answer is no. Now, getting back to what you're saying, or said, that aren't, or do we, as people living in this country, talking about the African descendant people,
Right.
aren't we at this moment enjoying a freedom or a sense of freedom to do whatever we want to do, pursue whatever we want to pursue? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
My question to you is that when and at what time in world history, and a date in world history, did we have those privileges?
I'm saying that under the language of the law that I've read, that this occurred during the 14th Amendment,
No.
because it placed us under the we were placed under the jurisdiction of the Constitution
No,
at that
Mr.
point.
Rose, I'm surprised that you're saying that. Now, the things that we enjoy today came about as a result of 1964, the 1964 Civil Rights Bill that was passed in 1964. Prior to that, you know that. You go into a restaurant, they said, we don't serve Negroes.
All right.
You got on the bus down south, we said you had to sit in the back. You went to a theater, they said, well, you had to sit up in the balcony.
Well, these were
And then you had colored water fountains, colored bathrooms, and you couldn't go into a hotel, and you could drive down south, you couldn't even buy gas.
all right. You're
for
talking
your car.
you're-
And if you drove down south in a new car, they might lynch you. You know that. You're old enough to know that.
Well, these are, you know, you're talking about the accommodation laws.
Well, regardless.
Okay, and I'm saying that-
You're telling me about enjoying the fruits of citizenship and rights to pursue the things that we wanted to pursue. Yes. Beginning in 1964 when they passed the Civil Rights Bill. Prior to that, no. The answer would be no.
But, Mr. Williams, you are still maintaining at this point, even though we have all these additional laws passed, that we are still not citizens.
According to the United States Constitution, I will always go back to that.
And I'm saying that, according to my reading, the 14th Amendment does, in fact, make us citizens.
How
But let's move on from that.
Okay.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
If, in fact, we are not citizens, as you state, then what recourse do we have? What can we do to make us citizens? What process should we embark upon to remove all the doubt relative to whether or not we are not citizens?
Well, you see, that cannot be defined. In other words, you cannot do anything as a whole people in this country to make us citizens of this country. I'm talking about we're not citizens due to the United States Constitution. Now, if the United States government want to rewrite the Constitution and add us into that Constitution, that's a different ballgame, okay? My argument is saying that we are not citizens of the United States of America due to the Constitution that was drawn up in 1787. That's all I'm saying. So now, if you feel that you are a citizen of this country, fine. I will not tell you anything different.
Okay.
Only thing I'm doing is presenting my argument that we're not citizens under the United States Constitution drawn up in 1787.
It's interesting. At one point, you say that we are not citizens according to the Constitution, and I'm showing you the letter of the law that says that we are. And then you speak to the accommodation laws that were passed specifically for us, but then again you say we are not citizens. I mean, it's sort of confusing to me, you know, where your logic begins and ends, and how you arrive at these conclusions. I really don't, I really can't see at this point. Perhaps you can offer some better evidence or some other evidence to substantiate your position.
Okay, first place, as you mentioned, and I agree, that the Constitution does not state or name a race of people. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It says a person born or naturalized
Right.
in this country is a citizen, right?
Right.
Okay. That sounds good, doesn't it?
Sounds good to me.
Right, okay. Now, they brought that 14th and 15th Amendment. Those two amendments was brought forth during what is known as Reconstruction, or the Reconstruction era of this country. We're
Okay.
talking about 1867 to 1877. Okay, that's your Reconstruction era.
All right.
Okay. Then, and a year later, 1868, they came out with Jim Crow laws that wiped all that away. Okay? And that those Jim Crow laws was applied against one race of people. So what I'm saying to you, you're trying to say that under the 14th Amendment, you keep going back to that, under the 14th Amendment, that we Africans living in the United States of America are citizens due to the 14th Amendment. I'm saying that you do not imply or impose Jim Crow laws on citizens. That's all I'm saying. I mean, what kind of citizen are you?
Mr. Williams.
Either you're a
Mr.
first,
Williams.
wait now, just a moment. Either you're a first-class citizen or you're not a citizen at all. You cannot be a second or third-class citizen, so I'm going to ask you, under the 14th Amendment, no, just a moment now. Under the 14th Amendment.
No, hold it, Mr. Williams.
Okay,
Hold it right there.
all right.
We're not talking about a classification of citizenship, number one. What we're talking about are, what you're referring to, rather, are state laws as opposed to what the Constitution states. And I'm saying that, yes, I agree, there were Jim Crow laws passed in the South primarily, but are you aware of any Jim Crow laws, say, in the state of New York, or in the state of Massachusetts, or in the state of...
Jim Crow laws was applied all over this country.
Not so, sir.
All over this country. Mr. Rose, where you been? You read, you're an intelligent man.
Again, we have a bone of contention here.
Okay, but what I'm saying to you, you're saying that the 14th Amendment made us citizens, right?
I'm saying that was part of the package, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments being the total package.
Okay.
That the 14th was a part of that package.
That made us citizens?
That
Is
made
what
us
you're saying?
citizens, right.
What class of citizens are you saying that we were under the 14th Amendment, that this 14th Amendment made us? Was it first-class citizen, second-class citizen, third-class citizen, fourth-class citizen, or no citizen?
I'm unaware of any classification of citizens other than the word citizen in the Constitution. I don't see classifications for citizens.
Well, you see, here's what's happening, Mr. Rose, is this. The 14th Amendment, all those amendments are just words up there. They have no meaning for us as a people.
Well, you're saying that, but I'm saying that you have offered no documentation that would substantiate your thinking.
I have offered you all kinds of documentation. I have offered all kinds of analogies and so forth and so on.
You've offered analogies,
it's
yes.
It's a matter of whether you accept them or not. Okay. That's the key, whether you accept them or not. I've given you all kinds of reasons why we're not citizens. And if you don't accept those things, then that's a different story.
Individual feelings and what the law of the land states are two different items. Would you not agree?
No, I won't agree to that. I'm going to tell you why. If you're telling me that I'm a citizen of the United States of America, but then again you take me out and back and tar and feather me and hang me up on a tree, then if you're telling me that I'm a citizen of the United States of America, and then you tell me, get up and give this white man your seat and get in the back of the bus, nigger, if you're telling me that I'm a citizen of the United States of America, then I got to go to a colored washroom, or I got to drink out of a colored fountain, then what kind of citizen am I? I don't feel good if you're going to call me a citizen and then discriminate against me, Jim Crow me, kill me. The Ku Klux Klan's come into my home, take my children out, like they did Emmett Till, murder Emmett Till, and the murderers are walking the streets today if they're not dead, because nothing happened. They didn't even get a slap on the wrist. So if you call that citizenship, I don't want it.
Well, the examples the example that you've given are interesting, yes, and accurate. Obviously, we all are aware of the history of what has transpired in the past relative to the Ku Klux Klan and the lynchings, the 3,000 or so lynchings that are recorded here in this country. But I'm still saying that these were individual acts. These were not mandated or enacted in any form or fashion by the wording of the Constitution. And I don't think that we can hold individual action against the wording of the Constitution. I think that we must consider that, yes, there's been radical action, and there is radical action, I should say, occurring as we speak, but that does not infringe upon the language of the law.
Okay. Let's go back, Mr. Rose. Let me remind you again. Let's go back to Eyes on the Prize.
All right.
Go back to Martin Luther King marching and Bull Connor
Right.
putting water cannons, dragging them off to jail.
Right.
The telegram was sent to John F. Kennedy to send troops to protect the marchers. Telegram came back from Robert Kennedy saying that we cannot send troops because those people have no rights to protect.
Well, you know...
So wait now, just a moment. If you're a citizen of the United States of America, as you claim according to the 14th Amendment, then why wasn't troops sent there to protect your rights? And why, again, in 1964, if you claim that you're a citizen, why did the United States government create a civil rights bill that was passed in 1964 for one race of people, you, us, as a people? You see, so I have to go back. I can, keep repeating myself,
Okay.
but I don't want to do this simply because I cannot accept the 14th Amendment making me a citizen of this country. I cannot accept the United States Constitution making me a citizen of this country because there's too many things that I have experienced that keeps me from believing that. You see, we were not allowed to be citizens of this country. You got to remember now, they're not going to take a slave who was made chattel or property of someone and then all of a sudden give that individual all kinds of rights and citizenship and everything like that. Now, they tried to do that. Now, what you may be confusing the 14th and 15th Amendment with is that during the time of Reconstruction, they tried to do that, okay? They wanted to make the Negro or give this Negro citizenship, but it was never signed. It was only adopted, okay?
Hold it, Mr. Williams. Hold it right there now. You're saying that it was never signed and it was not adopted. Are you saying it wasn't adopted?
It was adopted in 1868, but not enforced.
When you say enforce, what do you mean enforce? Who is supposed to enforce it?
The United States government, the Supreme Court, the FBI, any law enforcement, the judiciary system, etc., all over this country is supposed to enforce your rights as a citizen. That's what citizenship is all about. You can't deny a citizen rights in this part of the country and then give him a few rights in another part. That person's not a citizen. Something's wrong with that. I can't see that.
Well, and let's look at the 13th again. The 13th Amendment clearly states that acts of involuntary servitude or slavery are prohibited throughout the country. Is that not correct?
In certain states, down south, it was mainly issued for the southern states.
It was mainly an issue for the southern states?
That's what it was drawn up for. It was mainly issued for the southern states, but the other states benefited from it also. But mainly it was issued for the colored states. I'm sorry, the southern states.
Are you familiar
or the
with
Confederate states? Go ahead.
Are you familiar with Secretary Seward, who was the Secretary of State under Abe Lincoln? Are you familiar with his certifying of the 13th and 14th Amendments?
This is okay, I'm saying.
And you're telling my audience that there was no ratification process that occurred in order for him to be able to say with certainty that this is in fact the law of the land?
It had to go through congressional legislature in order for that to happen.
We understand that.
Did it go through congressional legislature?
Yes, it did. And the different states are, in fact, outlined. If you look at the annotated version of the U.S. Constitution, you will see that each state has been given a date. In fact, the 13th Amendment, interestingly enough, was the first state to ratify the 13th Amendment. So I'm saying that I really can't buy into the argument that we are not citizens based on the Constitution. If your argument had been that it was that you felt that we were not citizens based upon some individual action or the actions of some states who enacted some laws, I might agree with you. But as far as the wording of the Constitution is concerned, it leaves very little doubt as to our position in this country. I mean, how can I disagree with you? You know, when you mentioned the events of those dastardly events in the history, when many of our people were sacrificed and abused and mutilated, how can I deny that? Okay, but I'm saying that these are individual actions that do not reflect directly on the Constitution.
Okay.
So my question is, again, to you, what evidence can you present to our viewing audience that would substantiate your position that blacks in this country are not constitutionally citizens?
Well, you have to show me where in the Constitution that it says with the name or using the name Negro or black, just a moment, or African American, whatever name you want to call, you got to show me where in the Constitution does it say that you, us as a people, are citizens.
Well, you might ask the same question. I mean, the Chinese might ask the same question. The Japanese or any other ethnic group might ask the same question. They're, like I asked you earlier, there are no specific races or no specific ethnic groups mentioned in the wording of the Constitution.
So I'm not
the mere fact that you are a person under the jurisdiction of this country makes you a citizen, and that's the reason I kept coming back to the 14th Amendment. And I'm saying that you have thus far failed to present to me, and I don't know about the viewers, but you have thus far failed to convince me that your position is based soundly upon whether or not we are citizens relative to the Constitution. I'm saying that as far as the wording of the Constitution, it is crystal clear to me, and I also understand your point about states' rights and what have you. I understand that clearly, but I'm saying that to say that we are not constitutionally citizens is where I have a serious problem and a point of disagreement.
Okay, now let me ask you this, Mr. Rose, is this. Under the Constitution, a citizen has rights to be protected?
That's correct.
Okay. You say that you're a citizen of the United States of America due to the Constitution of the 14th Amendment, right?
13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments.
Okay, let's take the 14th Amendment, or any amendment. Let's take the Constitution.
Okay.
The Constitution protects a citizen of this country, right? The rights of a citizen of this country. Is that correct?
Yes, to a
Okay.
degree.
Well, okay. Now, you say that you're a citizen, right?
Right.
And that you have always been a citizen, which included the time of the drawing of the 14th Amendment.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Now, what rights did you have
The right.
under that 14th Amendment that was protected? I say that was protected now.
Well, you'll have to be a little bit clearer when you say protected. What do you mean protected?
I asked you, the citizens under the Constitution have rights that are protected by the Constitution. You said yes.
Right.
So you are claiming that you're a citizen, right?
Absolutely.
Under the 14th Amendment, which is part of the Constitution, right?
Right.
I'm asking you, what rights did you have that was protected by that United States Constitution or the 14th Amendment prior to 1964? What rights did you have that was protected?
I had all of the rights that any other individual in this country that fell under the jurisdiction thereof had at that point.
Tell me what rights.
I had the right to purchase property. I had the right to sue. I had the right to well, I have them all listed here. I'm saying that I had the rights of to form my own political party if I chose. I had the right to give evidence against my accuser. I had the right to inherit.
But you didn't hear what I said. You took those rights. I said, what rights did you have that was protected?
All of these rights
wait
are
now,
protected,
just a
Mr.
moment.
Williams.
If someone violated those rights that you mentioned, who would come to protect you and say, well, no, you can't do Mr. Rose like that because he has rights under the Constitution? Who will come to your rescue?
This is where
That's
the
what I'm saying.
judiciary comes in, Mr. And also the police force. If it comes to that point,
No.
I'm saying that, but basically you have a recourse when you go before the courts of the land if you've been abused to sue the party that infringed upon your rights.
I ask you,
So there is the protection there.
what rights do you have? Okay, you said that you took all these rights. You have a right to buy property and do this and do that and do that, right?
Right.
Okay. If someone violated your rights, is what I'm saying,
Right.
no matter what they may have been,
Okay.
prior to 1964,
Okay.
what law enforcement, what under the Constitution will come to your rescue and say you can't do that to him?
You've always had the federal courts there, Mr.
The
Williams.
federal courts never was in our favor. You know that.
No, I can't say that, Mr.
Okay,
Williams.
bring me a case.
Well, since you want to mention, what about the 1954 Board of Education case? The one that Thurgood Marshall is so famous for.
Thurgood Marshall brought Brown versus the Board of Education,
Right,
right?
right.
And guess what he did? I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
Guess what he did? He walked into the court,
Right.
into the Supreme Court
Right.
of the United States of America.
Right.
And you know what he presented as a case to defend Brown versus the Board of Education? You know what he presented? He presented the 14th Amendment. And
Okay.
do you know what those justices told him?
What?
So you cannot bring the 14th Amendment in this court, or will not allow that. He was not allowed. He didn't win that case on the 14th Amendment. They wouldn't allow that. They threw that out.
Well,
Now, that's all documented.
And that's the point that, that's where we have, a difference of opinion. I'm saying that, not that your argument is not valid, but if you were to bring in your resources, if you were to bring me court documentation that states this, not that it didn't happen, I'm saying that there would be very little doubt in anyone's mind relative to your position. Okay, I'm saying that you say that Thurgood Marshall walked into the federal Supreme Court and was talking about the 14th Amendment, and they told him that it was non-applicable in this particular situation. I'm saying that if you could show our viewing audience, or if you had the actual record that you notations where someone could go and research what you're saying, I'm saying it would give more of a credibility to your argument, rather than you just saying, well, this happened.
You
And
can't
I'm,
say
I'm saying
Mr. Rowe.
that as we are entering this age of discernment, that it is absolutely crucial that we as a people not only must be able to verbalize, but we must also be able to research and study and to ascertain for ourselves whether what is being said is accurate or not.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up. What you have implied is that Mr. Williams, regardless of what you said, I believe that you're just saying this off the top of your head. And you said, well, what evidence can you give to the viewing audience
Right.
to back up as proof of your statement?
Right.
I'm saying to the viewing audience, I said to you, Mr. Rose, that all a person has to do is go to the law book and research Brown versus the Board of Education,
Okay.
okay? And then they will get the documentation and the language that was used on both sides
Okay.
of
And-
the argument.
And understand me, I've got no problems with that. But
Okay.
I'm saying that it would have lent more credibility to your argument if you had been able to say, well, if you look at this document from the court,
I'm saying that
and,
now.
Okay.
So-
that
so
I mean,
do
if
I
you
have
had been able to.
credibility now?
No, hold on. Hear me out. I'm saying that if you had been able to come and say to the viewers, if you look at court documents such and such, such and such, you will find the following words, okay, which will substantiate my feelings about what occurred during this particular case. I'm saying that you have not done that. And this is what, it sounds, you're saying, well, this happened. That's fine.
But does that discredit what I said?
No, but it does not lend credibility to it
Well,
either.
you can't say that.
Okay,
I'm saying that I'm giving you and the viewing audience
right.
the opportunity to go to the law book and research Brown versus the Board of Education.
Okay.
And then they will see verbatim what went on during that trial. That's all I'm saying. So I cannot go around with all these different documentations or showing you where you can get this and what line this is on, line 6 and page 19, or whatever case might be. See, so I'm telling you and the viewing audience, go to the law book, research Brown versus the Board of Education, and you'll see exactly what I'm saying.
And the court stated in Brown versus the Board of Education that, what happened now?
When Thurgood Marshall walked into the court to present the case that is known in history as Brown versus the Board of Education, he tried to defend his client, which was Brown, with presenting the 14th Amendment, saying that this individual under the 14th Amendment was a citizen and should not be discriminated against. The Supreme Court justices said, well, no, you can't bring that argument. You can't use the 14th Amendment for argument in this case. And they threw it out. So you have to come another way with your argument, which he did.
All right, Mr. Williams. And it appears that we're about ready to wrap up. And as I told you from the very beginning, that Mr. Williams is an extraordinary individual. And whether we agree or disagree, we will maintain our friendship.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm saying that this is not the first time that we have had a difference of opinion. And again, I want to thank you, Mr. Williams, for coming in.
Okay.
And hopefully that we can have you back again.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it, Mr. Rose. I enjoyed myself immensely.
Thank you.